this morning Mark Bichachi. He is a communication expert. I have Honorable Martin Owino, Member of Parliament for Ndewa constituency, as well as Philip Magal, who is an advocate. All right, gentlemen, let's jump into Week in Review. We're going to start with the aspect of war on graft. And all matters were DCJ with Mwilu's arrest that we saw, as well as now Lesiyampe's arrest. Let me begin with you, Magal. You are an advocate. Did you see this arrest happening under the DCJ?
No, I didn't expect it until Monday when the story started coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the question in my mind was, who might it be that they are going for?
Right.
And what might the motivations be? As any other Kenyan out there had, they revisit threats on top of my mind. And I asked myself, if at all this was a revisit bid, what would be the entry point for the executive? What would be the best place to attack? And of course, as at that point, talking with my colleagues, it was obvious that the DCJ would be the soft target.
All right, and Honorable Owino, that's one of the things that Kenyans are also asking.
Yeah.
Yes, we saw President Uhuru Kenyatta last year speaking out of emotion at that specific time, but he did say the sentence, nevertheless, that, and I quote, "we will revisit the judiciary." Is this him fulfilling that sentence?
That's why it is very important for leaders to watch what they say and where they say it. Mm-hmm. Kenyans can't disconnect from that threat to what is going on now, especially with these charges we are seeing. But more than that, what it will bring to the DCI and the DPP is the issue of integrity. Should they fail, because he's still innocent until proved guilty, if they fail to prove whatever they are saying, then people will start losing integrity in this type of arrangement.
Right.
And I think it's sad, because I think there are so many cases that should have been brought before this, especially some happened 5 years ago. What were they doing? Why couldn't they bring her to justice? So there's a lot of questions in Kenyans' minds.
Why do you think that's the case? Because a lot of these cases happened, 2014, 2015, and she still got a good certificate of conduct in 2016. Why do you think that misunderstanding? Why?
Exactly, that is why.
Are Kenyans supposed to fall for this?
No, in fact, that is why people are doubtful. And when you have a situation where people are doubting the process which you are taking, why couldn't this happen in 2014-15? Why now? That's a big question. And justice not just in the courts. Justice must also be seen in the people's courts.
Bichachi, why now? That's a very good question.
You see, why now is a very simple question to answer. It's answered by one name, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. You see, one of the things that has happened since Uhuru took office for his second term, he somehow decided to step out of the usual political thinking of Kenyan politicians. And he's risen a class above everyone else, in the sense that he's decided, for once in the history of our nation, to basically do the right thing. And what is proof for me for this? When he said during his BBC interview that the lifestyle audit can go as far back as his great-grandfather. There is no Kenyan politician who's ever said that I am willing to be processed in such a manner. Now, what does that mean? And I keep saying this. Just because Kenya has made mistakes since 1963 does not now mean in 2018 we cannot decide and say we are doing the right thing. And then we cannot say that because 10 people stole before me and I was the 11th person and I was arrested, that the other 10 make my arrest unfair.
But Mark, that is just talk. When we see the president saying that he also wants his family to be looked into, it's one thing to talk, it's another thing to do when we now see the war being taken to his own doorstep. Okay. Those are two different things.
Now, you see, the thing is, the president is clear on this matter. Do you remember when the name of his brother was mentioned adversely in the sugar issue? What did the president say? Typical Kenyan president would have said, Parliament, please keep off this matter. But what happened? The matter was investigated, and Kenyans now today know that Uhuru Kenyatta did not bring in a single ounce of sugar. How do we know that? Because the president, in his own statement, allowed and said, if he is guilty of anything, put him. under investigation and put him to be prosecuted. Now, my question is, if he's made that statement about his own brother, now forget about the other rumors about PAs and other assistants that we will not quantify because they've not been quantified for us. But the truth of the matter is this: we must congratulate the president for the steps he's taken so far. Now, I would only fault him if there was evidence against any of his relatives and he did not take action.
Honorable Wino?
It will take Kenyans some period of time to believe what you say, that it is what is being done. There's a lot of play in politics in all these things. What I say today may not be what I intend to be done. That's why we are saying, okay, we support the president. We have never had him stamp his foot like this before. That's a good plus. But we are also wary of the people who are implementing these things, whether they are doing it rightly or they are also implementing some political agenda. That cannot be taken off the table. That's why we are questioning arrest of the DCJ. Was it timely? Is the evidence enough? We are yet to see, though.
Do you think her arrest is more criminal or politically instigated?
Both. Especially if you're connecting the dot, what the president said during the campaign and what is going on now. How would the president exonerate himself of that?
Right. One moment. Magal had a point. Magal, as you also do that, here's the thing. The DCJ tells court in her sworn affidavit that the president is making good his threat to fix the judiciary for nullifying his win last year.
And for very good reasons, yeah. Number one, I'll tell you this. The president made that particular statement. Remember, again, he made very derogatory remarks against the persons of the sitting in the Supreme Court. After that, we've seen the judiciary budget being cut down almost to bare minimum.
So you believe for this one it's more political? Her arrest is more political?
There are all indications that it is political. If you look again at the JSC, why isn't it fully constituted to date?
Right.
It is because of president's omissions. If you come and look at what now happened to the DCJ, look at the kind of charges, for heaven's sake, for failing to pay taxes. Are you the one? Do you make your own returns? You purchase property, engage a professional, give them the money to do it, and then where does the money go? Should you be held accountable for that? Look at the other cases, loans with a private entity. Is she repaying the loan or is she not repaying? It doesn't matter whether there's security or not. If you give me a loan, I don't give you a title, but I do still pay my loan. I mean, your interest is not my property. Your interest is that I do repay those loans. And that is why we find those charges to be very much far-fetched.
Right.
And this is what I like to tell Kenyans. You know, we are so desperate. We are so desperate to fight corruption that every little act and words of tokenism being dished out to us is celebrated. You know, the government is not doing us a favor.
And Magal, I have to ask as an advocate.
My question the president is not doing us a favor. The president is doing what we are paying him to do.
Yes. And my question.
And we must call out those incidences of insincerity,
right,
of malice that we see out there. There have been relations that somebody high up in the in statehouse,
right,
was arrested for bribery within statehouse itself, but we've not seen him arraigned in court.
Magal, as an advocate, do you think that the office of the DCJ, given the history, Kalpana Rawal, Nasi Baraza, and now Philomena Mwilu, given the history, do you think that office is jinxed?
I'm not really superstitious, yeah? I'm not really superstitious.
I'm not jinxed in the superstitious sense, that office in itself has a problem, should I say?
Yes, and it is for the sole reason that, you know, it is the blind, where you can blindside the public, you know. You cannot go direct for the CJ, you cannot go direct for the judiciary, but the closest you can get is to go for the DCJ. But even if you look at the previous cases, yeah, it has not been outright malice like we purport this to be. It has been cases of blatant violation of
my
our laws.
question is very, very simple. And I'd like my fellow Kenyans to reason with me. Philomena Mwilu has been in charge of the judiciary for a number of years now. Okay? The judiciary is her baby. Okay? If she's being unfairly treated, there is no greater point to prove what you have built than to subject yourself to that process. Being charged in court is not in and of itself a wrongdoing against your person. If she is wrongfully sentenced, then that is something that is wrong. But being taken to court cannot be termed as malice, because it is not a form of punishment. So let's be very clear. If she's done a good job as a DCJ and she knows that her judges and magistrates are fair and impartial, then she has nothing to worry about if she is free. We Kenyans do not need to be treated to the display and the comedy of errors that even led people who have never seen arguing in court, arguing for one person. If the charges be so frivolous, then let them fall on the standing of evidence in a court of law.
And that leads me to my next question.
my
Honorable,
point.
we saw the multitude, I don't want to say multitude, but the number of lawyers that were representing Philomena Mwilu. A lot of them are coming from or having an attachment with the ODM party. First of all, one, why do you think such a heavy backing from the lawyers? Number two, do you read into it in the sense that it still has to do something with last year's presidential petition or 2022?
And does it raise the question is Philomena Mwilu an ODM member?
All right, or let's have
that could be a coincidence. ODM is a coincidence. Take it out of
because we didn't see the same thing with Idero.
Now,
And that is why it is a coincidence.
it's a coincidence. We don't want to put fire where there's no fire.
Let me tell you, coincidence happens once.
Hold your horse.
Is not a coincidence.
Okay, Mark,
Hold your
let's
horse, because I want to start with him first. You see, prosecution is a terrible game of mind. The fact that you are arrested, that devastates you right away, whether you are guilty or not. Because here, we are not just talking about an ordinary person. We are talking about DCJ. That's why in the West, before you are subpoenaed, they take their time to make sure they have enough evidence that if they arrest, very flimsy percentage would go out of jail. But this one is hurried, and it has no connection with ODM. I've just said, if your person or if your colleague is attacked unfairly in the eyes of the lawyers, you be sure there will be a battery of lawyers there, even more than that.
Maga, what do you think? What is happening within your circle?
The reason why you saw a battery of lawyers in that courtroom on that particular day is because it's not only the office of the DCJ that is in court. Our office is in court, the judiciary is in court, and the independence of the judiciary is under direct threat. And that is why you saw all those people in court.
All right, we need to move on,
There are
gentlemen.
very elaborate procedures for trying for indicting a CJ. They should have started with the JSC, but then the JSC has already been sabotaged.
Right.
Now, the only solution they had was to arraign her in court.
Right.
And charges do come with... Let nobody tell you that being arraigned in court is not being sent to jail. It comes with very high level of stigmatization.
Yes.
Remember, there is your reputation. Even if you are let off the hook at the end of the day, some people will always look at you and say, hey,
Bichachi, I can see you coming in, and we need to move